First of all, let me say good afternoon, brothers and sisters. I want to thank you, Brother Fred Redmond, for that very, very kind introduction. I want to thank you, Leo and Stan and Tom, for inviting me to be here, but more importantly, for your combined friendship and your leadership of this great union. You know, Leo, I've always considered the steelworkers my union, just like I do the mine workers, and something happened just a little while ago that, you know, brought a little bit of that into question. I went into the green room and they put this makeup on you. I know you can't tell that Leo has makeup on, but he really does. I said to the lady who was about to put the makeup on, "Make me beautiful." And she stared at me for about 45 seconds and she said, "I can't do that, but I can make you visually less offensive." Now, I guess I should have realized, Leo, that the steelworkers always give you the blunt truth, even when they love you, right? So thanks for having me. You know, during last year's election, I had the pleasure of campaigning with steelworkers and other union folks all over the country. And we had some real candid conversations about the importance of taking a stand for good jobs. And I'll be honest with you, I spoke to some union members who supported Hillary Clinton and others who planned to vote for Donald Trump. Yet, whoever they had planned to vote for, every single person that I spoke to wanted the same thing. They wanted a fair economy. They wanted new rules that benefited workers, not Wall Street, the rich, or the well-to-do. And they wanted a better life for them and for their children. And if the election had been a referendum on a stronger union movement, a new direction on trade, on good jobs, and a brighter future for ourselves and our family, well, we would have won that election in a landslide. But it wasn't. The election was between two human beings, imperfect as all of us are. And we owe it to our members and to America to do everything that we can to win progress from this administration, just as we did with the last. And so from my very first meeting with President Trump, I let him know that we'll judge his White House on actions. I let him know that we're watching, and I let him know that we're keeping score. You see, if the president does something good for all working people, something that's consistent with our values, then we'll support it and we'll work hard for it. And if he does something that threatens who we are and what we stand for, then we're going to fight it as a unified labor movement, all of us sticking together. You see, we did the same thing with President Obama. And if anybody has any doubts about that, any of your members do, just remind them of our year-long campaign against the Trans-Pacific Partnership. You see, President Obama was a great president, but he was flat wrong when it came to trade. And we stood against him when he did, and we prevailed. Now, President Trump talked a good game on trade, and he even signed the TPP's death certificate on his first day in office. But I want to remind you about something. He didn't kill the TPP Working people killed the TPP because we stuck together and let everybody know that we wouldn't buy it anymore. And we're going to do the same for any new trade deal if it fails to meet our standards. Now, NAFTA is going to be the real test. President Trump made that a major focus of his campaign. Time and time again, he called it the worst trade deal in history. And nothing resonated more with our members than that did. And yet it seems that the Trump administration could leave the very most oppressive parts of NAFTA in place. You see, they sent a letter up to Congress last week, triggering the process. It was pretty weak. The Wall Street Journal said it just tinkers around the edges of NAFTA. We don't need NAFTA tinkered with. We need it completely rewritten for the benefit of American workers. And we plan to play a major role in the renegotiations of NAFTA. And the steelworkers will be front and center in that fight because nobody knows trade like the USW. And working together, we'll demand a better deal and make certain that this process is not used to further tilt the rules in favor of big corporations. Our message to President Trump is pretty simple. Keep your promise. Rewrite the rules of NAFTA so it works for workers. Bring back our jobs. We'll support it. We'll make it happen, period. Nothing short is acceptable. You see, these corporate trade deals have torn our country apart for too long. Working people want a new direction. We saw that with the TPP. America's ready for something better. We're for ending the era of bad trade, and we're about to do that right now. And I got to tell you, Leo, one of the things that I love about the United Steelworkers is how you put union education front and center. You know it's critical now more than ever to build from the inside out. Working people need to understand how our economy isn't like the weather, that it's nothing but a set of rules. Those rules are written by the men and women that we elect. Those rules decide the winners and the losers. And those rules for the last 4 decades have been written for us to lose and them to win. It's not just some things that happen to us. See, we can change it with activism. And activism is built on issues. And that's why we're putting our issues first, why we've been asserting our political independence, and why we're not going to stop. You see, it's not enough for us to wish for a better life. We've got to work for it. We've got to fight for it if we want to win. And with our issues in the lead, partisan politics will then take a back seat because we won't be an ATM for any political party. We won't be taken for granted by any political party, and we won't be ignored by any political party. When our fidelity is solely to working people and to fair economic rules, politicians of all sorts will have to come to us. And that's how we'll stop choosing an election day between the lesser of two evils and start choosing between the better of two goods. So let's talk a little bit about issues. You know, we're just beyond the 80-day mark of this administration, and two very different factions have emerged. There's the Wall Street wing that seeks to undermine Donald Trump's promises to workers, and a competing wing that could win some much-needed progress for working people. Now, President Trump needs to decide who he stands with. Does he stand with the steelworkers and coal miners and farmers and other regular Americans who he promised to help in his campaign? Or will he stand with the Wall Street billionaires who rigged the economy at our expense? And that decision, that very one decision, will be the single most defining test of his presidency. And quite frankly, I'm concerned that the Wall Street wing of the White House has begun hijacking the agenda on infrastructure and trade and manufacturing. See, President Trump's already rolled back important federal regulations that keep us safe on the job. Silica standards, beryllium standards, and a number of others. His executive order on immigration has criminalized our workplaces and violates our basic principles. And by delaying the fiduciary rule, which says that financial advisors must act in your best interest, not their own financial interest, working people could lose more than a quarter, more than 25% of our total retirement savings. Think about that. Going into your retirement with 25% less simply because they were giving you advice that benefited them and not you. And then there's the attack on health care. You see, we opposed the American Health Care Act because it was an all-out attack on workers' health care security. It took money away from Medicare and Medicaid. It increased the number of people that were uninsured. 24 million more people would be uninsured. And taxing our health care plans while eliminating the taxes for big pharma and all the other rich people that were supposed to have been taxed. The only tax remaining is the tax on workers' health care bill, on our health care. See, that's like them having a big banquet, not inviting us to the banquet, and then sending us the bill, saying, here, pay for this. We had a great time. See, working people want health care for everybody, for all of us, as a matter of right. Not just the few, but for all of us as a matter of right. And we beat that bad bill, and it sent a pretty powerful message that if you pull a bait and switch on working people, I promise you, you're going to fail. So if Congress wants to pass something on health care, they ought to start by repealing the unfair and unnecessary Cadillac tax. We'd fight for that, we'd pass it, and would guarantee it. Maybe they could throw in Medicare for all and a public option so that every American out there, no matter where you come from or how much money your daddy or mommy had in their pocket, you could have health care as a matter of right. Now that's something we'd get behind and pass. And we're bringing that same focus and that same determination to the issue of infrastructure. You see, now I'm glad that President Trump proposed a $1 trillion investment in our roads and bridges, because that's the right scale that we need to be talking about. And the labor movement is ready to help turn proposals into shovel-ready projects with the most highly skilled and well-trained workforce in the world. But it matters how we raise the money, and it matters how we spend the money. Because if infrastructure dollars should be used to uphold high labor standards, good wages, and other protections, a good plan must use public money, new money, to support American jobs, American resources, and American steel in the building. On every single issue, I've given President Trump our ideas and our suggestions. He asked me where we were on issues, and he asked me to give it to him in letter form. I sent him a 25-page single-spaced letter that outlines the issues that we're concerned with and our position on each. I've asked him to follow through on his campaign pledges by laying out a vision that reflects America's priorities, one that raises wages and keeps workers safe, protects our retirement security, strengthens our unions, gives us a quality public education, and provides opportunity for every last American out there, newborn, native-born, or just born. And even before taking office, he used his bully pulpit to try to tell companies to stay put. And I don't need to tell you this. Carrier was his biggest target. Look, I think every president that we've ever had or do have should fight to keep good jobs here. Because every single job that's saved means one more family that can pay down the mortgage, save for college, or retire with dignity. But it's not enough to simply demand companies stay in America. If the jobs that are ultimately saved provide low wages, no benefits, and no voice on the job. See, the president should use his office and influence to call for an end to workplace intimidation, a rejection of right to work once and for all, and promote and protect the freedom of every single worker to form or join a union so that we can all bargain for a better life. You know, to put it another way, he ought to stop listening to the Goldman Sachs crew that he's installed in the White House, and he ought to start listening to Chuck Jones out at Carrier. Now, I want to remind you of something. And if you don't remember anything else I said today, remember this. This is America, the richest country on the face of the world at its most rich time in history. Let me repeat that. America is the richest nation on the face of the earth at its most rich point in time. And they would have you believe that we don't have the resources to get everybody a good job, to provide every child with health care and a quality education, that you shouldn't be able to retire with dignity and security. They do it everywhere else in the world, every other industrialized nation. But somehow, the richest nation in the face of the earth at its most rich point in time can't do it. Look, everybody ought to have the right to a job, and they ought to have the power to make that job a good job. And that means you should be able to bargain with your employer, whether you have a union or you don't have a union. You ought to be able to bargain for higher wages, better benefits, a better retirement. Don't you think that's so? Now, we know the reality of labor today. We know how the law only requires employers to bargain with recognized unions, and not even all the time then. Because wouldn't it have been nice, Leo, whenever U.S. Steel was about to spend $6 billion to buy Marathon Oil, wouldn't it have been nice if they could have put that $6 billion and we could have bargained and demanded that they put that into refurbishing our mills and modernizing our mills? Wouldn't it be better? Wouldn't it be great if we could bargain on all the dumb things that they do and we pay the price for? Well, those aren't necessary. Those aren't mandatory subjects of bargaining, so we don't get to. So listen, we're proposing something bold, something big, something better. We're proposing that every worker, everybody deserves a job, and everybody deserves to have the power to make that job a good job. The ability to bargain for better wages, safe working conditions, retirement security. And you ought to have that right whether you're black or white, gay or straight, immigrant or native born, union or not union. That should be a right of every American worker. That right. Because if you tend crops in North Carolina, or you clean rooms here in Las Vegas, if you're an engineer in Seattle or a steel worker in Pennsylvania, you should have the right to bargain with your coworkers for a better life. And an employer should be required to sit down and bargain with you so that we can share some of the wealth that we produce. Now, some will say that's radical. I say it's fundamental. And there's never been a more important time for workers to assert our collective power. And in the months ahead, we'll apply that innovation in the real world to win some real gains. When all workers in this country have a say in our pay and in our working conditions, we'll start to close the gap between the rich and the rest of us. We'll lift up families and communities. We'll build the America that our co-founders envisioned, our parents built, and our children deserve. And as I speak about the gains that we can win and the power that we can build, I'm not asking anybody to disregard reality. It won't be easy. We face long odds. But I want to remind you of something. Nothing is set in stone. The future is ours to shape, if only we dare try. Because when we stand together and we fight together, and we show them how absolutely determined we are together, we will win together, and we will close that inequality gap and make this country worker-friendly again, as it should have been all along. But it all starts with solidarity. And I'm talking about real solidarity, not empty gestures, not bandwagon posturing. I'm talking about the type of solidarity where the outcome is still uncertain. And if you jump in, it may cost you something in the short term. You see, my brothers and sisters, solidarity is most important when times are tough, when disagreements are the strongest, when the sun isn't shining outside. And how we respond as a labor movement to the challenges and opportunities of today and the days to come will define who we are and define what we are as a labor movement and as a nation. If we decide to stand together and rewrite the rules and create an economy that really does benefit everybody, including our children, great-grandchildren, and their generations after that, will be defined one way. If we decide to sit on the sidelines and watch immigrant workers get discriminated against, people of color be denied opportunity, workers lose jobs because of bad trade deals, thrown out of work in their 50s and have their pensions stripped from them, have health care taken away from us, will be defined in the most harsh terms. And quite frankly, if we sit on the sidelines, we deserve to be defined that way. See, there's one thing I want you to remember, though. We can't lose sight of the big picture, because the momentum in this country is swinging our way. Collective action is on the rise. America is in the midst of a long overdue national conversation about income inequality. There's a strong demand for good jobs and fair trade and raising pay. A powerful majority of Americans right now support unions. And our popularity is growing each year, especially among young people. So whether it's trade or infrastructure, wages, immigration, or health care, unions, us, we're ready to be part of the solution. We know the way forward. Collective action is part of the national conversation now, and that's a good thing. But don't get me wrong. Our opponents are bold, they're well-funded, and they are ruthless. They're going to come after us. They're going to keep up the fight. They're going to hope that we lose heart and stop the fight. But here's what I say to them. Bring it on. Bring it on. We're here. We're right here. We're standing tall. We're standing strong. We're standing more determined than we've ever been. Bring it on. Because unionism works. Solidarity is the strongest thing in the world. And America is hungry for change. We're going to have to fight for that change. We're going to have to stand for it. And we'll win it, brothers and sisters, because we're the ones who wake America up every morning. We put her to bed every single night. We roll the steel, we make the tires, we build the roads, we take care of the sick, we teach the young. We'll stand strong. We will not run. We will not hide. We will not retreat. We're the American labor movement, and we will not be denied. This is our country, and it is time, high time, that we took it back for the American workers.